Let's start. Welcome, Jerry. It's a pleasure to have you here on the Benu podcast. I'm co-hosting today with Ben the Jaffe, but as he just said, I'll be taking the lead in guiding the conversation, as it will be a conversation. It's not going to be a static interview. We brought you on because of your background, because we're very keen to generate some insights and to move forward organically on how to navigate change from a human-centered perspective, from a facilitator's perspective, but also against this big, shifting, turbulent landscape that we're all a part of. And without further ado, I think it's just worth having a little bit of an introduction, perhaps, from you as our guest about what it is that you do, and perhaps a little bit about why you do it.
Okay. So hello everyone, this is Jerry, and you can also call me Tzu-Yao if you speak Mandarin.
Tzu-Yao.
Yes. So, my background is in organizational anthropology. I think that's the first hat that I usually introduce to people, which means I kind of understand and research organizations using anthropology, using my body, using interviews, working with people, observation, just communicate and working with them to see how things are being done in organizations. And from there, of course, when I see problems, when I see some deep underlying assumptions, cultural aspects, that's where my second hat come in. I'm a facilitator, I'm a host. I use facilitation, workshops, training to try to shift perspectives, shift the way that people work or communicate so that we arrive at a better place where people understand each other better, they communicate, understand, and produce better outcomes and results. I think that's trying to be really down to earth what I'm doing. Uh, in terms of what my title, I am now in junior or change management consultant, and just starting out with this position, and actually just we'll be meeting my kind of first client after our podcast today. So really excited to hear more about what their struggles are now, and then also bring in some anthropological perspective, also futures thinking perspective of not just solving the problems that people are experiencing now, not just understanding it deeply at this moment, but also providing them a tool that they can think forward about where they want to go and what are the potential ways to achieve that. So yeah, that's a bit about me at this moment of my life.
Thank you so much for the concise overview, Jerry. Wondering if you can give us a bit more of an insight into what drew you to this kind of work. What attracted you to it?
I think it went back to this deep understanding towards people. So when I was in high school, I went into a community project where I had to draft a proposal to enhance like communities' living standards and how they are communicating with government. I did some interview, but then I figured out I wasn't feeling confident in representing or talking about their needs in like kind of pitching forum presentation mode. I feel like I was so far away from people. And at that point, I was in touch with anthropology. I found this method is such a profound way of understanding how people are living at the moment. What is their culture? Who are they talking to on their daily basis? How do they collaborate together? What kind of information is shared between them? What is not shared? And this is also very um, useful in terms of business and business and organization. Because nowadays when we talk about uh, silos in organizations or conflict or just collaboration or communication not working in the organization, often it's not just someone not understanding. It's how the system, how the culture in organization is not supporting people to collaborate. And often that requires a deeper understanding of zooming into individuals, how they are experiencing, how they are working on a daily basis, but also zooming out to the structure of organizations. And that was really fascinating to me. It's like, I'm not just researching people, I can actually help this group of people to work better together, to work with more confidence, with more ease, that feel that they can be themselves while making great work with each other. And I feel like that's what really drove me.
That's a fascinating perspective. And it sounds like I find it very interesting that you describe such a complex thing that's often quite difficult to talk about and explain in such an elegant and easy to access way. That strikes me as something that you practiced. And what I'm picking up now is that there are different levels where you engage with this. So you've mentioned the individual level and the organizational level. And you also mentioned these hats that you wear. So the first hat is organizational anthropology, right? And then the second hat is facilitation. And I guess you were already answering this question as it was coming up for me. But when you're wearing your first hat, the anthropology hat, what are the main problems that you're seeing? You mentioned that the culture is not supporting people to collaborate. And is this culture something that's determined? Is it contingent? Is it more loosey-goosey? What is this culture that we're talking about here?
Wow, that's such a great question. Um, so first, I don't know about every single organization. Maybe I can give an example in my internship. So I was in this multinational cosmetics business, and I was in the learning and development, global learning and development department. And when I started out to kind of improve our training programs, I tried to really understand what are actually the learning needs of the people on the other side of the earth, the people in the factories who are really using these training in their daily lives. And there I see that the problem is not just like how do we improve the training, but really how is this training playing a role or not playing its role in their lives?
Mm.
And how is this training in itself? Through it, we see that, for example, this training is kind of their own only way of understanding how the global headquarters want them to do things. But then they're disconnected or they are not at all encouraged to share knowledge with other factories, with other people in their similar positions, which at the end, the result that we're seeing is that all the factories are doing kind of their own ways. And the global headquarters is very confused and very disturbed with everyone not following the standards. So this top-down kind of training material is not at all doing its work. It's not at all helping people to, as they said, follow the procedure, but actually creating more disconnection because this globally designed material is not adapted to the local context. And of course, every local context is different. What's more important is that people talk with each other, share good practices, and align with along this sharing. So that's one aspect that I see. It's like this um, top down training assumption is still very prevailing in organizations. They hope that people just use one way of working, while that is not at all going to happen in these kind of globally dispersed organizations because people have their own daily context. They have their own suppliers to deal with. They have their own local regulations. They have so many even their managers, their teams, they have to navigate it on a daily basis. So what is more important is probably creating a platform where people can actually share their struggles and share their challenges so that they can really share with each other what is working and what is not.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I can see that with the organizations I've worked with over the years, from a similar background, this organizational change and transformation background. So I recognize all of the layers and the issues you've been discussing. Um, and I just wonder if if you think it's a management issue alone, if you think it's a leadership issue, perhaps.
Hmm. I think definitely management plays a big role in it because although we're like in the learning and development department, we have to constantly work with the so-called business units, the industry experts, and they are actually the one kind of saying that, okay, how's the result of our training this year? And it's very interesting that what they look at is mostly how many people are trained, how much percentage of people are they actually click on the training and they actually took the training, and how happy they are, how satisfied they are. So the so-called happy sheets measuring how happy or satisfied they are with the training from 1 to 10, how happy you are with the training, how likely would you recommend it to a colleague. But I was in these kind of meetings where the manager of the manager of the manager asked the manager who went to the training, uh, or, or even those uh, who lectured at this training, asking that, okay, how are people, how's their feedback? But there were no questions on, for example, how are people actually using these learnings back in their work? How are these training actually helping people in their daily work? What is the impact or ROI? That's put it really frankly. What's the ROI of training if we are really connecting what we discuss in the training to what behavior, what ways of working we want to see changing in the very factory level? Then these are questions leaders should be asking as well, because they kind of hold the budget. And if they are not caring about these questions, I don't think people would naturally, even if the learning department, even with if factory workers, they care about it, they still don't hold the decision power to change the whole system. But I'm not saying that it's all management problem. I'm saying that um, there's this mindset shift needed to
Okay.
to really focus the change and the impact of training to their daily lives.
That's interesting. So there's a translation issue, maybe, or you mentioned, what words did you use? There was disturbance at HQ when they get reports back from the different locations that there were issues following standards, which struck me as something that they found surprising. Yeah, I suppose from your perspective, it's not rocket science. Once you do a bit of research, you can more or less see the lack of connections. So I'm wondering, from a solutions perspective, if in this hypothetical, you're a CEO or a COO of one of these major global distribution firms, pick a sector, and you're getting reports back of workers in various factories, that the happy sheets aren't talking very well. They're not saying good things, and there are people leaving and issues on the factory floor. Um, is it is it a matter of also training the management then, or is it something that that takes a bit more of a multi-pronged approach? How would you resolve that?
Wow. At the end of the day, I'm just an intern here in this country. Yeah. Um, if I were the HR or the regional HR, I would definitely call for um basically more conversations between across departments, between HR and these managers and their their employees on the front line. Because what I'm sensing now is also people are really focused on numbers, on numbers in AI. How can we incorporate AI to make our work more efficient? But less on how are we actually using the time AI saved us? Are we actually building more connections so that we understand each other's work more, so that we create more organic and useful collaboration? Or are we just still making more meetings so we can digitalize more uh, and automate more workflow flows but then using all that time just on Excel or programming or AI? Because what I'm seeing is that people, when I talk to these HR, it felt like it was their first time seeing that the challenges, the siloed feeling of their employees in the factories. And then they always say that, I wish I had more time to go to training with them, to really talk to them. While for me, that was really the fundamental part of being an HR, being also a change consultant, change management agent, or learning development professional. It's that to understand what is the real needs, the real change initiatives that is from the ground floor. Of course, what what is needed on the leadership level, we need to know. But then what is actually the lived experience on the ground floor to be changed, to be facilitated, to be encouraged? I think that's where real success and sustainable success come in terms of change. Right.
That's a very articulate way of putting it. Thank you. My next question was going to be, could put on your second hat, but you've already done that a little bit, right? So now that we're in the realm of facilitation, particularly attuned, present, human-centered, which sounds a bit like an oxymoron because obviously it should be, but given that we've already dropped the AI bomb in this conversation already, I think that's why people are using this term more and more, because the zeitgeist, the discourse seems to be we're forgetting how to be human in many regards. And even with, this was an interesting point you raised, even with the time we're saving as a result of AI, are we then using this time differently? Are we able to be more human de facto, like automatically? And it seems like, to me, the answer is no. People need to be reminded in some cases because of the system that's around them, pushing them in various directions. And I suppose from my perspective, that's why facilitation is such an important role. And it's such a difficult role. And I'm wondering, in your experience, also not just from your head, but from your emotional intelligence, your heart, what are you picking up? What are people struggling with the most? And where do you see the biggest barriers that need to be, what's the word, dissolved or broken down or thought through, if that makes sense?
Mm. So what I'm sensing, also just coming back from an art of hosting training in Taiwan, what I'm sensing is that everyone is so busy, of course, dealing with important things at work. And what they are actually, people feel it, that they are so busy, they're craving for spaces that they can actually slow down. And this slowdown is not just like, uh, uh, scrolling on your phone or watching videos or um, just it's not like pure relaxing or thinking of nothing. I think it's a space where people slow down and have the space to make sense of what is happening collectively, individually and collectively. Because things are happening just so fast and so many things piling up that people didn't have the space to really talk together, to have conversations of what is actually happening and how can we deal with it and just face it together as a team, as an individual. It might, yeah, so far it might sound really abstract, but in terms of the general sense, that's what I'm kind of sensing. No matter we had a participant in hospital, but also others in teaching and startups. They are all facing similar issues of nearly burnout themselves and people they are supporting. While coming to this training, it's actually for them a retreat, a space that they can slow down to have conversations. And I think this urgent need for conversations in workplaces, in organizations, are just everywhere.
Hmm. That's really, yeah, I'm feeling that because I pick that up a lot as well. And my issue is people need to hit their targets, right? They have their goals and they're attached to their goals for whatever reason. What I found difficult is indeed slowing them down, like getting them accustomed and feeling safe enough. And they're not going to panic when they slow down for an hour because they feel like the previous week they've been approaching burnout. So the advice is usually plan an hour in your calendar where you're not doing anything and just sit there at your desk and be creative or something, right? And I often get resistance. It's crazy. It's like, no, I can't do that. I can't do this because X, Y, and Z. And I even do it. And I find it such a tricky issue. How do you handle that compassionately whilst also helping them, whether they're in a business or they're employed or a freelancer or a startup, they've got to hit their goals. So it's that balance, right, between the personal and the professional, if you can divide it, which I often struggle with.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's really hard to just come in and say, okay, let's do a 30-minute session or 1 hour session of something. It always scares people off. So I think my tactic is always to kind of hack small bites of these moments of conversations into the meetings, basically. Uh, for example, what I love to do is, of course, start with a short check-in. It's those check-ins that are highly linked to what is going to happen for the day, for a meeting, for just a gathering. But then still you have that moment of, okay, I arrived here and I can have a short exchange with just people in the room and tend to get a sense of, how are people feeling today? Where they are coming from. I think this sense of knowing where people are coming from really help people feel at ease and then ready to engage in conversations, not just go straight into what is going wrong or what do we have to do. Of course, if it's those emergent uh, urgent meetings, then it's not all kinds of meetings that you have to set a check-in, but usually that's what I sneak in. Um, so like I love to use this example that um 2 months ago, I was supporting a startup founder. Um, and then there was this meeting where the next 2 days later, she will be in a pitch. While the team members, some are traveling, some are going around. So the checking question I asked during the meeting was that traveling cannot be without what? You fill in the blank. Also, it's
Sorry. No, I'm just processing the question because it made me think already.
because I was trying to connect this question with it requires like a short, precise answer of traveling cannot be without something. It's connected to the pitch energy that the founder is facing. She really has to be precise and to the point. But also people are traveling at the moment. She's also traveling to connect people what matters to them at the moment and the energy that is needed in that meeting. So that's always what I take into account when I design these check-in questions. And also, like for example, today I was in another client meeting that tomorrow we're going to have a bigger discussion starting a new project. So today's check-in question I asked was, what is something that you just started out trying recently? So bringing this like new, the energy of something you're just new to try and to set the tone of, okay, tomorrow we're starting something new. What is something new that you're starting recently? So it's like these connecting, checking questions that help people to engage with each other and having conversations that help later to build trust, to have better outcomes, to better quality of communication. I think that's what I love to sneak in.
And yeah, I was hoping you would talk about these questions because I remember, was it two meetings ago, the one before the last one? I noticed you doing it. I noticed you asking me some very good questions at the start of the meeting that really stopped me and made me think and got me out of the headspace I was in before. I wish I could recall what the questions were, but it really worked. And it was also how you asked. It wasn't just the content of the words. It was your body language, and you shifted the energy a little bit. I found that fascinating. Also, now that you've explained the tactic a bit more.
Was it about the um which which place affected you the most?
It was about places and homes. Yeah, it was about which place did you feel most at home, I think, which was
Now listening to that question, I feel like, oh wow, I did ask that? Oh wow, okay.
but I'm a very open guy, so it wasn't an issue for me. I just found it was very
Yeah.
interesting and quite tailored, to be honest, to the stage of where I'm at right now in my professional and personal life. And I just found that very skilled. And it's something I think it's needed more and more in these bigger and larger companies, but also public sector companies where I've worked in, uh, like universities mainly, but also hospitals where the stakes are so high because people's lives are on the line and stress levels are up there. I think people who are trained to do this need to be deployed into organizations like that. And I don't know, it's just something I see. It's a big gap, like having somebody caring for the carer, somebody checking in with the teachers, the essential people who keep these organizations running, or the impact founders who are trying to do something different. Like maybe your startup founder had an impact focus, because my background in sustainability and climate is a bunch of people just trying to fix everything. And the standard pitfall is they forget to actually take care of themselves then, and then it's burnout territory, right? And I'm wondering if that's something you see in your interactions, if there's a level of maybe personal neglect because they feel like they can't stand still because the world's on fire, right? Like they have to help put it out. How do you deal with those people then, right? Like, is that a facilitation question? Is it a management support question? Is it a training issue?
I think that's really spot on. Like the also what you observe in your work, that people are constantly caring and worrying about and like busy dealing with the things around them, but then they didn't have the time and the energy to care for themselves. I think that was also why in this art of hosting training, that was why people were there for the space of retreat. And actually, I really like to borrow a concept from art of hosting training, talking about host conversations. Actually, there's this fourfold practice. I will just mention one of the two of them. So of course we know that we are, as facilitators, as hosts, as caregivers, as social workers, as these people making impact, we're often the one hosting others. We're hosting conversations. We're hosting the space for people to get help, to get resources, to find, to be encouraged, to be empowered. We are there to host others. But actually, before hosting others, the first of the fruitful practice is to host ourselves, to host oneself. And I love how one of the hosts, Caroline, she actually said, hosting oneself is the biggest gift you can give to others. Because when you host yourself, you're actually creating space for others to be hosted. You're making yourself present. You're opening yourself up so you can let more people feel this energy of calmness, of stillness, of being open to challenge, but also to possibilities. It's like embodying this hosting, embodying this openness so that others are welcomed and are invited to, to be in conversations, to be empowered. And also, it's really a fundamental practice to not burn out, to really see where you feel comfortable contributing and set the boundaries for oneself and listening to your own voice, what feels okay to do, what feels good, and also when it feels too much for you and when to say no. On the other uh, activity, it's called the open space technology. It's basically an activity where a lot of people having conversations, having many different conversations at the same time. It's kind of like those conference when after the long lecture you go into the tea and the desserts, the snack area, and you start having these emergent conversations with just another participant. It's all these emerging things. And there in this open space technology, there's a rule of leaving a conversation when you feel like you're not contributing. It's really tending to your own needs to know, okay, now I'm not learning from this conversation. I'm not contributing either. So then I have to have the courage to leave, and people are there to understand it and to hold the space. And then I have another host, Mansi. She mentioned that if we cannot even leave these kind of friendly, kind conversations, how can we even leave toxic relationships? So it's really this practice of hosting ourselves to know where am I learning or not, when am I contributing or not, and take the actions needed to feel that you're valued and you are contributing in the way you like.
I really like that. And I imagine that even if you're an expert in these areas, a change management consultant or sustainability leader who's had these kinds of trainings, it's still a struggle to slow down, like consciously slow yourself down so that you can ask yourself these questions. And what I've noticed in my own practice recently, especially the last few years as I've gone through this process, is that the more I have done this, the more available, as you said, I become in these rooms, in these conversations. I can literally see it playing out. I can see the other people, the other person. In many cases, it's that the baseline for me is how I interact with my daughter because she's a young child and she's got this innate wisdom. And if I'm stressed out and I don't realize it, she will reflect that back to me. And that's like my best, I guess, my rule of thumb there that I then use to map out how I come across to other people, if that makes sense. And even if I'm stressed out and I'm trying to throw some washing into the washing machine whilst tidying the kitchen at night, I sit down on the floor and I do a couple of breaths and I'm already calmer. And if I can connect with how I feel in that moment and play that out in a professional context, when I'm able to do that, it's like I'm sometimes able to turn around a conversation which might not be going in the right direction. Like you say, it might not be contributing for them. And I might not be my best, most present hoster in that moment, particularly if you're giving a workshop. The stakes can be high and you're expecting to really help the people in the room. You want to give them something to walk away with. So there's a tendency to pressure yourself. Right. So I found that really interesting from this perspective. But maybe to shift the conversation somewhat a little bit to this organizational level. And this is what I find interesting recently, because in my experience trying to figure out what holds organizations back from delivering on impacts, whether societal or environmental, what I often find is that there's sometimes a pathology, that there's a leadership culture, there's a narcissist CEO or somebody with like really toxic, like you said, there was a toxic work relationship, and that's sort of imbued into the culture, and people are picking that up as the way to be successful in that organization. Yeah, it's also very bad for everybody, and it's bad for the environment and bad for society and what have you. Is it possible to facilitate an organization, if that makes sense? Is it possible to go, okay, this organization, like in the legal sense, this corporation is a person, right? How do we deal with this? There's a whole discipline, right? Organizational psychology, but from a practical perspective, like these are the big problems we have to deal with at the moment. And I'm like, okay, it's not just about the individuals, it's about how the system affects these individuals. And that system is an organizational entity with perhaps its own identity. And there is no blueprint, right? So
Right.
yeah, just something to maybe unpack a little bit. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, if you have insights.
Wow, that's a really big and really, really great question, Alex. How can we facilitate organizations? I definitely don't have the big right answer. And I think that's kind of the quest I'm after, this question of how can we facilitate an organization?
Me too.
From,
Yeah.
yeah, from what I learned, I know it's definitely, as you said, not a blueprint. It's not a, a 5-step framework that you finish this by and you succeed. I know that it's an ongoing process, or if not ever-ending process of multi-layered. Um, sorry, it's the word multi-layered across across the hierarchy. If there's the hierarchy, multi in terms of hierarchy, it's not just the leadership, it's not just the shop floor. It concerns all the levels, multi-level, how they work or not work together. Um, and it could also be, um, sorry, I lost my words.
No, it's fine.
And
Absolutely fine.
for me, it's multi and growing stakeholder point of view. It's that it's not just if we're talking about one group of people, let's say the factory workers. Usually, it's not just the employees that are working in the factories. It's about their HR. It's about the suppliers they're working with, they're communicating with. It's about the safety department that sometimes come in and inform them the safety measures they have to measure, they have to follow. Um, it's about the global supply chain manager out there, maybe 3,000 kilometers away. So it's never just about one small group of people. It's an ecosystem point of view that I think it's important to keep in mind and to work with. It's always to do our best to see what's their connection with all these different stakeholders, how they come into play in the work they are doing, and trying to facilitate from there. For example, building a community, it's not just so that people can have a good time together. It's because in that case, people understand more about what the work they are doing, how they are interconnected and affecting each other so that they make better decisions because they know each other's better. They know where they are coming from, their struggles on the other side of the earth. Because if I'm messing with my data here in the factory, people on the other side of the world, they will have a hard time giving me suggestions, giving me information that I need. It's really understanding these connections inside organizations. I think that's really the starting point of how they are interconnected. How can we make that interconnection smoother and feel basically more human because we're working with people at the end of the day. And all of us have our needs. And usually if there are emotions, it's from our needs not being fulfilled. And it's really sad to see there are so many burnout and just unmet needs and frustrations in all these organizations.
Yeah, wow, that's really deep and also elaborate. I find it resonates with what I see as well. Like there's this need to have a systems view, this big picture awareness, but at the same time, being able to zoom in wherever necessary, right into the person or people or relations, the relationality you were mapping out. Like what's going wrong with these relationships? Whose needs aren't being met? Who's um standing to gain from this relationship? Because there's often power dynamics, right? You mentioned hierarchy. And I find it so necessary to spend time figuring this out if we're in a space of empowering people to affect change. And I think this is where it bridges a little bit because there's systems thinking, which is, okay, here's a snapshot of how things are right now. But then there's this futures thinking perspective, which you'd mentioned earlier. And Ben's also got this strong background in futures thinking, as has Flux Forward and the wider ecosystem of Futures Hub. And I'm wondering how the two play out in this kind of work a little bit. So I saw this great diagram online on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago. I shared it with Ben, and it was an indigenous or native practitioner, I believe. And what she had done is she'd mapped out various different pasts in threads, like who wrote the histories, like the victors or the people who were colonized. And she was saying that the way we map out our futures depends on how we view our pasts and also how we view our present, right? And that's where I started to think, okay, well, if more people can actually clearly comprehend without being overwhelmed the system they're in, then maybe they are better able to map out positive futures. And I'm wondering how you see that playing out. Like, how do we enable people to navigate these systems better?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that comes back to when we were mentioned earlier, this space where people can slow down and make sense together what is happening around them. That that helps these originally siloed threads to actually weave into each other and then see, okay, you were struggling at that moment where I didn't know. I thought you were just not replying to me, but actually you were struggling with the system, with the manager that you're dealing with, for example.
There you go.
And with that in mind, people start to see patterns about how we can move forward. Like, how can we strengthen this communication? How can I share my struggle with you when I need help? But also in terms of this, incorporating the organizational aspect and the futures thinking, I would love to hear how Ben works with this domain, because to be honest, I learned about futures thinking, but I didn't have yet much opportunities to apply them. I think I kind of incorporated in some of the questions I asked, in some ways of working, but not really using it totally. So I would love to hear how you work with it, Ben.
Should I say something now?
If you could, yeah. I mean, jumping in just before the end of the podcast, I think.
Yeah, definitely I can. But the point
Yeah.
is, frankly speaking, from the beginning, Jerry, I wanted to see how we can move forward in the flow and how Alex and I can co-host this, episode. And at one point, I decided just to say nothing and just left the stage and let Alex to handle everything by himself, because I found because of the background you both have, maybe it could be more, I mean, interesting. I'm listening more than engaging for now. This is the way we are working, We are just trying to move forward and try to understand when we can engage. So anyway, the point is, as Alex said, first of all, thank you for joining us. And thank you, Alex, because it's almost 50 minutes. You talk about different topics, and that was interesting. I learned a lot. Frankly speaking, I prefer not to engage a lot and just, but you, I mean, pointed me. That's why I just want to ask something to bring kind of, let's say, how can I frame it? Kind of a future oriented perspective to the table and ask you something simple. My point is, as I know, when you are talking about anthropology, okay, it seems for me you're most focusing on the past and present. It seems. I'm not sure. But when we are thinking about future, we are thinking about something which is not possible to touch. We have no idea about it. We have no idea what future holds for us. How can anthropology help us imagine better futures, not just study the past or present? Because maybe this is one of the main struggle we have. Alex and I at Floods Forward are trying to focus on empowering people, individuals, and organizations by focusing on futures. And we are trying to do something that even we have no idea specifically what it could be. And you mentioned lots of things. For example, you already mentioned that you also bring a future thinking lens when you are working with people or organizations. How do you introduce that without overwhelming people who are already, for example, I don't know, you mentioned burnout or skeptical. And this is the main point. My main question is, and maybe I'm just trying to apply the answers of this question, how we can move forward by applying future oriented approaches, not just by talking about them.
Wow, thank you for that question, Ben. Yes. So actually this question, how do I apply anthropology in futures thinking? That is the question I have been thinking and playing with from the first day I was amazed by futures thinking in university. I think the biggest part of it is that when talking about futures, when we describe or brainstorm or share our vision, our ideas about future and futures, uh, one question my teacher back then asked me was that, so why did you have this thought about future? What is your assumption behind this future? What kind of future are you bringing? Is your future the past? Is your future the present? So, for example, back to the learning community thing in a multinational enterprise. Before that, I also asked them about what kind of um, learning organizations or way of learning you're envisioning for this organization. And of course, they talk about training. They talk about a better learning management system where they can oversee how many people are trained. So here, the future is kind of an extension of the present. The assumption behind that is we need a future that is kind of the the linear improvement of what it is now. So as an anthropologist, what I'm bringing is seeing clearly this underlying assumption of how they're imagining the future. Their underlying assumption is that, okay, we need something that is like what do you have now, but then, more efficient and better. But what they're missing out is that what are the needs of our learners? How are they learning? And what kind of new things they have to learn, new ways that have to learn in the future. For example, in communities or through online communities or peer learning in factories. So these are kind of the emerging needs that can be incorporated through anthropology because we are there talking with people on the shop floor and kind of inviting them to share their voice in terms of what they imagine, what they want to have in the future, not just the one coming from a single perspective from the management level or from the learning level. I think that's this being keen on what are assumptions behind the future and bringing multiple perspectives from the multi-level, multi-layered stakeholder view. That's where anthropology comes in futures thinking.
Excellent. I think this is a fantastic place to end, given your meeting with your client in.
Yeah, so I feel so sorry for that, but it's such a great conversation we're having.
I know I would go in some very interesting directions from here. Maybe this is to be continued in a separate meeting. Maybe, Jerry, if you'd like to explore that, that would be wonderful. But I just want to respect your time because of your client. So thank you so much for joining us. It was fascinating.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And I'm sure Ben does as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And of course, sooner or later, maybe in few days, we are publishing this episode and it's available on different platforms for those who are listening. Um, we are publishing it in different platforms such as Apple Podcasts, let's say Castbox, and whatever that could be possible to listen to the podcast. And the if anybody wants to know more about what we are doing and building at Flux Forward, feel free to approach Alex and I. Also, Jerry, we are sharing your LinkedIn account in the caption, meaning people, if want to learn more or even contact with you, they are easily can approach you. And at the end, thank you again, Alex. Thank you. Today, that was a little bit difficult for me because I just tried after 31 episodes, trying to say less and less more.
It's a great. Thank you. I feel that you're really well prepared, and thank you for all these questions and really holding the space for me. I feel really supported.